I originally bought the Oxford auxiliary lights for my Suzuki Gixxer GT because I found the headlights on that bike to be borderline dangerous at night. But I sold the GT before I fitted the lights, and the headlights on my new V-Strom are also pretty pathetic, so I fitted the Oxford lights to that instead. Now these are the first auxiliary lights I've ever bought, and I've only been using them for a couple of weeks, so I can't give you long-term experience or comparisons, but what I will do is tell you how much difference they make and what I do and don't like about them. Now the footage I've recorded is actually surprisingly good quality, to be fair, and does a pretty decent job of showing the difference the lights make, but it's still not perfect, so I'll try to describe what I actually see with my eyes as best as I can when we go along. And if you look in the bottom corner of the screen, it'll say what lights are on in each clip you're watching. And finally, while it probably goes without saying, this video isn't sponsored. I bought these lights with my own money, and the link in the description is not an affiliate link, so I don't earn commission if you buy them. Now I did plan on installing the lights myself, but in the end it felt like too much hassle, so I took it to my local Suzuki dealer, and they fitted them at the low point on my crash bars, which isn't where I'd have chosen if I thought about it. The brackets and lights now sit exactly where the cage will touch down if I drop the bike, and annoyingly some of the light just goes to illuminating the back of my front forks. Now a higher up spot should avoid both of those issues, so I'll probably move them to a different location, but that's a job for another day. Even with that though, they still make a huge difference. They're rated to put out a combined 2300 lumens, which on paper at least is marginally more than the pricier Denali D2s. Now that actually isn't a huge amount of light though, and for reference, to my eyes, it feels like they probably put out roughly the same amount of brightness as the stock headlight on my bike, probably a little bit more, so adding the Oxford lights feels like it doubles the amount of light my bike produces, if that makes sense. However, around back modes that makes a real difference, and I find they light up the road immediately in front of the bike really well, and that I can see noticeably more of the road and hedges immediately around me. They're still not mega bright, and even with the stock headlights and the Oxford pods both turned on, they of course get nowhere near the brightness of a car will give you, and while they do a good job of your immediate surroundings, they don't have enough juice to light up the road that far ahead of you, and the light throw feels pretty limited to me. To be fair though, on back roads and with a full beam on as well, the total light output is actually pretty decent, albeit still less than I'd like in an ideal world, but on motorways they don't really make a huge difference. And while I can see some benefit of having the Oxford lights on when I'm on motorways, it's pretty minimal, certainly compared to the back roads, so if you're looking something to improve lights on motorways, you're going to need something with a lot more output. It's a similar story on dark A roads as well. They definitely help, and probably a little more so when there's no overhead lighting, but the throw is still fairly limited, so they don't help you see very far ahead of you, which is more of a problem when you're going a little bit faster. The upside of that though is that I never feel like I need to turn the lights off, and nobody's flashed me since I've had them fitted, so I don't get the impression they dazzle oncoming traffic, which is great because it means that I get better lighting all of the time, not just when my full beams are on, and because I leave them on permanently, they'll also help with me being seen by other vehicles, as well as helping me see, and anything that helps car drivers more likely to see me is worth spending money on. But to be honest with you, while I am really pleased I bought them, they have left me wanting a little bit more, and if I was buying again, I might consider going for something with a little more kick. The Denali D4s are more of a floodlight than the Oxfords, so I wonder if they might have been a better choice, but at a combined 8000 lumens, they're over 3 times as bright as the Oxfords, so I think they might be a little bit too bright to have on all the time. And I'm thinking that maybe the ideal setup would be a pair of small lights like my Oxford lights, plus some more meaty lights like the Denali D4s. And if you've ever played around with that kind of setup, I'll be interested to hear how you found it, so share your experiences in the comment section below. Away from the actual lights themselves, it's worth talking briefly about the on-off switch. It's quite bulky, and because it has a soft plastic cover for waterproofing, it's a little fiddly to operate with gloves on. Although because I leave the lights on all the time, that's not really an issue for me personally. It also has a bright green light to show that the lights are turned on. Now that sits just outside of my normal eye line, but I do notice it occasionally and I find it a little bit distracting, albeit not so much that it actually bothers me. Now I paid £172 for these lights, which I think is pretty good value for what you get. I'm sure there are plenty of really good budget auxiliary lights on Amazon, but I wanted to go for a brand that I know I can trust without spending the big bucks on something more premium like the Denalis, which are over 250 quid. But for what it's worth, if I went for an extra pair of more powerful flood style lights, I'd be happy to consider something more budget friendly as long as it has a good reputation. So let me know if you found anything along those lines that are particularly good. So what are my overall thoughts then? Well, I think the Oxford auxiliary lights are absolutely brilliant, and I wouldn't want to go back to having a bike that I ride at night without some kind of supplemental lighting. They make me feel more likely to be seen by cars, and I feel less tentative riding in the dark now because I can see so much better, particularly on back roads. And my only real criticism is that they've left me wanting even more, which isn't really a criticism as such, and to be fair, they're probably about as bright as I expected them to be, and I guess really what I'm trying to do is just manage your expectations if you weren't sure what difference they'd make. Now, if I've missed anything or if you've got any questions, let me know in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe for more biking goodness, and until next time, ride safe.